Bears 24, Giants 20. Welcome to Giants Nation Show. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, the Football Grump. A third fourth quarter collapse in 10 games for the New York Giants. They fall to 2-8. It's a franchise record for consecutive road losses with 11 in a row now for the New York Giants. Longest active streak in the NFL. Remember, just trying to think about that. The last time the Giants won on the road, Seahawks week 5. That was a good feeling. And I just kind of want to talk about we're going to go into the details of Dart getting injured, Russ going in, what that means, other stuff, another fourth quarter collapse for the defense overall. But the big picture of this is that one of these GMs was hired in 2022, and the roster is completely different except for two players, a person who's their backup tight end and an injured player. He's 6-3. One is now 2-8 with the best two players on the team being from his predecessor. That's the New York Giants. Grump, where do you want to start? The Dart injury, Russ going in, fourth quarter collapse. I mean, it seems cliche, but it's just unbelievable how the Giants figure out ways to lose. We're like, this is not going to happen again, right? This is definitely not going to happen again. And that's exactly what happened. It happened again.
So I feel like I always want to start with the defense, but I feel like the Dart conversation's a long one. That's why. So if you want to start with the Dart thing and the injury, I kind of want to talk about how Dart played for the entire game. So if you're down for that, we can do that. Otherwise, I don't really know that it was a defensive collapse so much as Bears receivers started catching the ball.
Yeah, again, now granted, they gave up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. The defense had a big part in this in the fourth quarter, but the Dart conversation is the more important run. And because we're going earlier, I was working on my notes the entire game, right? Constantly updating them. And I was like, man, this is great Jaxson Dart football. And I still might do an individual breakdown on his game. That's how good it was, especially considering we may not see him next week because he had a concussion. He was out cold. He had, a couple bad plays, the should have been interception that Gunnar Olszewski blew up. And, the first fourth down and then that fumble, right? So that fourth down, that fumble, I'm like, damn, that felt like they were going to put them away, right? They were up, they were at the Bears 20. They were up by 10, getting ready to score again. And it just felt like they were, with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. So Jaxson Dart comes back onto the field, and I'm like, wow, he looked like he was out cold, but he's back on the field, right? They throw a screen, run the ball, come back from timeout, and I'm like, Russell Wilson's in the game. I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, wait a second. Why was Jaxson Dart back in the game? What happened there? So Jaxson Dart gets injured. We're going to have the conversation on are they making him too are they putting him in danger with too many hits, right? I am actually going to defend the Giants a little bit on that side, at least in this individual game. Here's where my frustration comes, though, Grump, is when Jaxson Dart was benched, me and you both had the opinion that they should probably go to Jameis Winston as their backup quarterback, correct?
Mm-hmm.
We are both of that opinion, not as strong. When Jaxson Dart went into the concussion tent, the blue tent against the Eagles, and Brian Daboll lost his mind to the point to where he got fined for $100,000 because he had to deal with Russell Wilson for for 2 plays. That was like, well, we really need to make Jameis the backup quarterback. Well, they don't, right? Because they don't want to have the image of having Russell Wilson inactive as QB3, the guy they plan to have as their starting quarterback all year. All these stories they wrote about his leadership, and no, he's going to bring a lot of value. And when you put Russell Wilson in the game, you can't do anything offensively. And Russell Wilson had this was his day. The Devin Singletary on 3rd and 1, right? He catches the ball 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, breaks the tackle, goes 41 yards, right? That adds 3 points to the board. Outside of that, Russell Wilson plays 2 for 6, 4 yards, 2 runs, 12 yards, and 2 sacks. Did essentially nothing good outside of an 11-yard scramble. Absolutely nothing outside of an 11-yard scramble. And I do think they win this game if Jameis is the quarterback in there instead of Russell Wilson. Now, you can always go back and say that, but also Jameis may have thrown an interception to throw the game away, right? So that's not a guarantee, but you certainly could have ran your offense. Where with Russ, they just can't run an offense with Russell Wilson unless they're playing the Dallas Cowboys. And I just can't believe that. I can't believe that They put themselves in their situation, and I won't give them any excuses for losing this game because Jaxson Dart got hurt. If Jaxson Dart doesn't get hurt, they win this game. But they had the quarterback in that they spent the entire offseason planning to be their quarterback for the long haul.
So, I mean, I understand the initial optics of not making Jameis Winston the backup the moment you bench Russell Wilson, but I also think that you have to only worry about optics a certain percentage, at different points in the year.
Because it creates bad optics for you. It constantly
But I mean, forget the optics. I mean, like at this point, the optics are the team is bad and they're not going to go anywhere, this year. That is the current outlook on the Giants. So it's not bad optics at that point to make any decisions from a standpoint of like, we need to make sure that we have certain things the right way for the future. Like at 2-7, I don't think it makes a difference anymore that Russell Wilson, the guy you went out and got to be your starter initially, is now QB3 and wins. Like, who cares? We're bad. I get it. Like, you know what I mean? That can be your defense. It was like, you know what? We're bad. I understand. You've been telling us we're bad. I can see that we're bad. I made a decision because next year I need to know if Jameis Winston needs to remain as my backup. That is the plan. That's how it appears to me, right? You go out and you sign Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal that's not worth a whole hell of a lot of money. Then you go out and you get Russell Wilson for a 1-year deal. Then you draft a quarterback. It all makes sense. They haven't said that, but that seems to be the move, right? So like at a certain point, you can set the roster up where you can kind of know what happens next year if Jameis Winston is your backup. Can I actually run my offense the way I want to with Jaxson Dart, with Jameis Winston, and just take my lumps that occasionally Jameis Winston's going to throw a boneheaded pick or do something stupid, or he can't run as fast as Jaxson Dart or the same way as Jaxson Dart. This is the time to figure that shit out. It like you said, it could have been weeks back when Brian Daboll was flipping his lid that he had to deal with Russell Wilson for 2 plays. That's the time where you're just like, you know what? I don't want to roll with this. And they won that game too. They win that game where he yanks Jaxson Dart essentially out of the tent. Like, you're riding on good optics, good narratives. Like, no one's good. That's a blip on the headline radar that you're moving Jameis Winston to be your QB2.
They make bad decisions because they don't want bad headlines on a Thursday or a Tuesday or whatever it is. And it leads to bad headlines on a Sunday, right? Like, I'm going to talk about the receiver situation of having Gunnar Olszewski out there. Like, or it's either that or it's just it's just stupid, right? Like, maybe it's they don't care about optics and they just make bad decisions over and over again, which, hell, there's part of it too, right? We could, talk about the Graham Gano situation, other situations, but it's like, it was clear to everybody, you just can't have Russ as QB2, right? I think we even did a mailbag question. It's like, they need to move Russ to QB3, Jameis to QB2. And this is not coming from a Jameis lover either way, by the way.
No.
Like, Jameis is one of the more overhyped players, I think, in the NFL. I think if he's starting for you at a long period of time, it sucks. But he's perfect for like that 3-game stretch when a quarterback gets injured, right? He's going to keep you in games, and he's also going to keep the defense in games when you have to rely on him for a long
which is what we've always said about him.
Right. So this isn't coming from like someone who's been like, oh, I love Jameis. I didn't want Jameis as the quarterback if he was planning to start week 1 for the Giants in free agency. So like, it's just stupid. And then another thing, and there's so many, like, we're talking about some smaller fish before we get to the bigger fish of like this whole team as a whole. But like, I was furious at halftime. You have Gunnar Olszewski. Darius Slayton gets a hamstring injury, ended up coming back a little bit. But you have Gunnar Olszewski, who not only has really never played wide receiver in the NFL, right? Like, it goes back to the training camp joke I had of like, if he gets 100 yards, I'll pay someone $200. But he's never really done it. When he has done it, he's been a slot wide receiver. So this team, Bo Collins goes to the IR, right? Darius Slayton with a hamstring injury. Hyatt's going to go in, right? You would think that, right? Because he's their backup outside receiver. Nope, it's Gunnar Olszewski going in. So, like, you have Lil Jordan Humphrey, who you could assign to the practice squad, who you clearly like him more than Jalen Hyatt. You started him for 3 games over Jalen Hyatt. 3 games over Jalen Hyatt. You like him more than Jalen Hyatt. Ray McLeod comes in. Instead of signing Lil Jordan Humphrey to the active roster and releasing Jalen Hyatt or whatever, Jalen Hyatt gets 0 snaps in this game. 0 snaps. They lost his returner job as well. And you have Gunnar Olszewski playing outside receiver, who is a non-receiver, who, when he is a receiver, play slot. And I understand that he broke up a pass, right? I'm not, I'm glad he did that. That, could have been an interception that took 3 points off the board. But like, that's not a reason to have him out there over Lil Jordan Humphrey or something. Like, you have to have actual options. And they just continue to do like this silly stuff. And we're going to get into all the game. I do want to talk about Jaxson Dart's game because I continue to become more and more impressed with him. But like, they're 2-8, and I just don't want to hear about like, oh, well, if this happened, they would be 4-6, or they'd be 5-5 if they didn't have fourth quarter collapses. But they did, and it's not. You can't point the finger at one unit. You can look at the front office, the head coaching, and just the players in themselves, which goes back to the front office. And it's just that's how they do it, and it's almost come to be expected.
Yeah, the Jalen Hyatt thing is incredibly infuriating because you could see already they don't even know what to do with him because they tried him out at kickoff returns last week. It netted basically nothing. He can catch the ball and he can run forward, but not to any way that gives you an advantage. They went back to Deonte Banks this week. He has no place on this roster. The place on this roster is just, I appears to be, at this point past the trade deadline, like a mark of, I don't want the shame of having to cut a guy I traded up for or something, because they couldn't move him at the trade deadline. They can't seem to do anything with him on offense. They can't seem to do anything with him on special teams. He's a useless player. And
yes.
and it goes back to this same thing. Like,
it's post trade deadline too. That's the one thing. I was willing to have patience till Tuesday. Now the trade deadline's over. What are we doing here?
It doesn't make any sense.
Cut Evan Neal. Do something.
Exactly. Those are the two
backup
guys.
Receiver out there, and they don't have
because
one.
You have to stop worrying about optics. The optics are this team is bad. It doesn't matter. The optics of having to cut like players that you bet, like, we know that these players are bad. This is not like a crazy headline that they move on from these guys. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You have to GM like you're going to be the GM here next year. If the first thing that a new GM is going to do is cut these two guys anyway, you might as well get an early start on the assumption that you're going to be the GM here next year, cut these guys and get people on possible futures contracts or something, find a guy who's was the 54th cut of a team at training camp and give him a shot, see what you have for the future. You like that is serving you more than guys that you are going to try and quietly get rid of anyway. You might as well just loudly get rid of them and get a head start.
Yeah, like, and again, maybe it's not optics and they're just really bad and really dumb at this.
That's
right?
not
like,
better.
That's almost it's actually, it is worse. At least you get like fixed, like, stop worrying about this stuff. But like Deonte Banks still being on the team is not good optics because he stinks and he makes bad play after bad play after bad play. Having him around makes him part of the conversation. But I think their fear is we trade this guy here and he's going to have a 60-yard catch next week. Or Deonte Banks has an interception for the Colts at 9 a.m. in Germany or whatever.
Toughen up. Yeah. Let it go.
So let's talk about Dart. Yeah. Where do you stand on the Jaxson Dart taking too many hits thing? I think I know where you stand. Brian Daboll will get blamed for this. I do think there's blame to go for Brian Daboll of like the Eagles game. There's 4 minutes left. Why are we getting our quarterback hit on purpose? The other side, though, is that Jaxson Dart doesn't listen, right? Like, he takes hits and he engages in hits at times. This run was simply a nice, big, long run. He fumbles, and in fumbling, he hits his head on the ground. Like, I'm not blaming Brian. I listened to the press conference, and there was a lot of, packing, reporters are packing a punch trying to blame Daboll for Jaxson Dart being injured. I guess if you're talking about, hits adding up, sure, but this was him hitting his head on the ground in a game where we needed to use his legs, to be honest.
So this is what frustrates me about what I thought was a legitimate talking point that was getting overblown, in my opinion. I think there's like a collection of possibly 3 plays where you can have an argument that like Jaxson Dart shouldn't be running the ball in this situation. We're not talking about a huge amount of time where like we're having whole drives where Jaxson Dart is tucking and running on called runs in garbage time. Like, that's not happening. There are plays to nitpick, and you want to call it nitpicking or nipping it in the bud or whatever. It's a legitimate argument. Okay, fine. But we were talking about it way too much. Like, they were acting like there were a lot more called runs in garbage time or time that doesn't matter. You live and die with quarterbacks like this. You know the style of quarterback that Jaxson Dart is. And if you are not okay with that, then this whole conversation is not for you. Like if you just don't like quarterbacks where the running game is part of their, skill set, then that's a fine opinion. But then that just means you don't want Jaxson Dart. So like there is some of that, right? This is a point in the game where they have a lead, not a commanding lead. They're moving the ball well. This is just
and Dart couldn't slide on. This isn't like a play where Dart should have slid.
So when conversations get overblown, stupid shit starts getting added into the statistical sheet, right?
Yeah.
So like this conversation got overblown. This is a football play. This is what happens. People are falling on each other. He fell down. He hit his head. He's concussed. This could happen to any player on any play. And if your argument is that he shouldn't be running the ball at all, then you don't want Jaxson Dart as a quarterback, which is fair, but that's where we are right now. So there's no blame for me coming around in any of the way that Jaxson Dart was utilized. If anything, I was very happy with the game plan that they had for Jaxson Dart in this game. And he was dealing in, he was working this game plan very, very well, throwing the ball into the intermediate part of the field, getting people on fades, cutting in routes. I thought that Jaxson Dart was playing a great game, 19 of 29 for 242 yards. And then on top of it, 6 carries for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I thought the offensive game plan was great. I have no blame for the coaches on offense.
He got hurt on 6 for 66. Sorry. So yeah, I think that's what we try and do on this show is like you can hear the criticism, but like you can't be mad at the coaching staff for Dart getting injured on that play. If he got hurt against the Eagles 2 weeks ago, or even last week against the 49ers a little bit at the end of that game, but you could drill into Dart, like stop taking unnecessary hits. This just was not one of those plays. Here's where you could talk about like what the hell is going on that sideline. They had an entire possession and they sent him back out there, right?
Yeah.
Like he was knocked out cold and and I think he was, they can't prove it, but last week when he's like hunched over and, I've been concussed. I've seen other players been cussed, man. That just looked like a guy who was spinning a little bit, but whatever. You move on to this week. He was out cold. And then so Brian Daboll took credit for taking him out as he's the one who realized something wasn't right there. How did that not get addressed that's where you could look at this team and being like, what the hell? What the hell? You send a guy out there with a concussion that ended the game for him. Like pad him out. And they'll probably try and get work as fast as they can to get him through the protocol next week. But like he was out cold. Like when he came back in the game, I was like, oh shit. Granted, they don't have the TV angles and stuff, but they have spotters and stuff like that. I was just because he didn't make any effort to pick up the fumble. He just sat there asleep. It reminded me of Malik Neighbors last year against the Cowboys at the end of that game. So there needs to be blame for somebody on that because that was unbelievable that he was just back out there. Thankfully, he didn't take any more hits after that, and they ended his game. But dude, he balled in this game. Like, there's obviously a few bad plays. Like the first 4th down, they cut. I hate that they cut the field in half on do or die plays. You've heard me say that a million times on this show. But he just needs to hit Wandale on that. And you almost had the interception to Gunner again. That's stupid shit you can't have. And then the fumble. Outside of that, dude, he was balling. And something we talked about a lot on the mailbag this week, right, Grump? Of like, I didn't think the film was as good as I thought it was going to be last week. It's like you got to start getting to the backside digs, right? The backside in cuts, in routes, right? Third and long, they pull up both linebackers, back them out, covered the route concept well. Bam, floats it over the linebacker's head for Darius Slayton. 2 plays later, gets it to Wandale Robinson. Slayton made that one-handed grab, 2 for 2 on both his deep passes, right? So that's another area of concern is the deep accuracy. Well, he went 2 for 2 on these ones. Slayton obviously made a great grab on one, but so you like that. The running ability, like you mentioned, with over 66 yards, a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns in there, right? He has 7 rushing touchdowns in 7 games. He's averaging over 2 touchdowns total per game. I'm still probably going to do a film breakdown individually on this game for Jaxson Dart because I thought there was so much stuff on there that was good. But like he flat out balled in this game. Like he was putting the team on his back.
You didn't even mention the Bellinger drop was a,
Oh,
I don't even
money.
know if I want to call it a drop, but what a throw that was.
Yeah, that was a money throw. Like again, he just made play after play. I meant to go look up his third and fourth down stats, but he has given me a feeling, I'll be honest, I haven't had in recent years as Giants, is like when it's third down, fourth down, I just kind of trust him. Like it's it's like a newer feeling against recent years. So yeah, it's a shame. I would be a little shocked if he plays next week. Malik Neighbors missed what, 2 weeks, 2 games
Everybody's
after
different with concussions though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really difficult to tell. And like that sounds like whatever, but like some guys linger in it and other guys just don't.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that.
I thought the run game started to break open pretty late in the game. If you're ready to move off of quarterback, I thought both Singletary and Tracy started to run pretty well.
Yeah, it almost saved them the game. I mean, they were terrible to start the game, right? They had 8 carries for 2 yards in the first half. They were using the under center run game, and the interior offensive line was screwing up. So again, like I said, they had 8 for 2 in the first half. And I'm doing the math in my head real quick. They had 14 for 79 in the second half. If anyone can divide what 79 divided by 14 is. So yeah, they almost saved them the game with the Singletary long run and then like back-to-back nice or the Singletary long catch and then the back-to-back nice runs by Tracy.
I think that's 5 point something.
5.64285714.
There you go. I'm doing long division in my head. Yeah. I think that the zone read, we finally saw it, right? With Tyrone Tracy and Jaxson Dart, and we saw it work to good effect. I was pretty impressed with the run game. It's a shame that it fell apart late in the game. It didn't do anything for them. Do you want to talk about the decision to go for it on fourth down as like a final offensive note? I'm sorry, the decision to kick the field goal from like the half-yard line.
Well, here's the thing, Grump. To go for it on fourth and short, you got to be beefy, and that's why you got to go to the Candlewyck Diner and get yourself some good food. You thought, son, and that's why Candlewyck Diner is bringing to you the #1 Giants show in the NFL, and they are the #1 diner in the state of New Jersey. And honestly, considering the state of diners in the state of New Jersey, it's probably the top of the ranks of the world. Like, I've never been to Montana. Best diner. If it was in Montana, it would probably clear. They might find some good business just going and being dominating. I usually go to their omelets, but I've trying to been shake it up a little bit when I'm there. I'm excited to go there in December when I'm up there. Even though with the way travel is, we might be driving up. I don't know, but we will be up there because why? Why not to see the Giants play? Is to go to Candlewyck Diner and see our good friends there. So if you go, make sure to tell them your Giants Nation show sent you.
Write it on the check when you sign
just a GNS 4L.
Yeah.
The waitress may not know exactly what that means, but when they're doing their accounting, they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. When you're there, put GNS 4L on the receipt. So Candlewyck Diner, it's 5 minutes away from the stadium. So there's a home game next week. Get it afterwards. And if it's a blowout, you
leave early and go there.
Or you can just stay for the entire game and be like, I'm going to have a quick drive. The last time I was there after a game was the Bucks blowout, and I had never been at MetLife Stadium for a blowout before that. And so I'm like, all right, we'll probably be there in like 30, 45 minutes. Nope, we just drove right to it, and we're there in 5 minutes. So go check out Candlewyck Diner, the #1 diner, A1 Day One, not just a supporter of Giants Nation show, but the supporter of Bobby Skinner and Giants Nation show. So go to Candlewyck Diner. You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did.
I'm glad you did. So we are doing a little bit of defense of Brian Daboll on this. They kick the field goal while they're up 7 with 10 minutes left. And Russell Wilson's in at quarterback. They have a 4th and 1, and they kick the field goal. There's 12 men on the field, and it's like at the half-yard line or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I am kicking the field goal 10 times out of 10. The only way I'm not is if I have hindsight and I say, hey, the Bears end up winning the game by 4 points. That's the only way possible, because their only successful play, again, was that Singletary a broken tackle. I understand the run game got a little bit better in the second half, but they were not able to get much push up front, right? It was based off cutbacks and stuff like that. They were not getting any push up front. So when you're in a moment when you need that push, I'm just not trusting the Giants to do that. You have Russell Wilson, who, you remember his last red zone trip before that for the Giants was, throwing, fourth down passes out of the back of the end zone. I just had no trust for the Giants to get that ball. I don't care about 35 yards of field position, all that. I didn't care at all. Again, like I said, I'm going up 2 scores there 10 times out of 10 with the situation where you have a run game that had 0 rushing yards in the first half from their running backs, and Russell Wilson at quarterback.
Yeah, so I'm with you when
the Bears didn't score the next drive either, right? Like they got the Giants got the ball back before they scored.
I'm not sure. The way I do,
they didn't. They had a turnover. They had 4 plays, 7 yards, right? So all the field position thing that Greg Olsen would not stop talking about really didn't make a difference at all.
So we're talking about the drive that Dart was taken out of. That was the 8th drive of the game.
Yep. It was there was 3 drives after that for the Giants.
So Russell Wilson comes into the game. You have a 6-yard run right from Tracy, 3-yard pass left short to Theo Johnson, 42-yard pass short right to Singletary for a catch and run for first down. Then you have a 13-yard run from Tracy, then an 11-yard run from Tracy. And then, you have a 6-yard run, minus 1-yard run, and a 3-yard Wilson scramble. The run game had given you almost nothing all game. But on that drive, it was sort of cooking. But I agree with you. Like, it's been mostly bad for this game. And, you're not ripping off an 11-yard run the same because you're not playing the same kind of defense at the, half-yard line. So, I understand that, some of these Tracy runs, maybe that doesn't mean so much. But you are you have them on their heels on this drive. And once you get to the penalty and it goes down to the half-yard line, I'm going for it. And I'm going for it because I watched the defense play in the first half. And, we're going to get to the defense. We haven't talked about them yet. But they kept the score low because Chicago was shooting themselves in the foot, not because the defense was doing anything amazing. So in my mind, I'm watching a bad Giants defense get bailed out by Chicago. And maybe if you don't get this, I don't know. I want all the points in that scenario. And I honestly think 2022 Brian Daboll goes for it on the half-yard line, even with a quarterback you don't like. I don't care if you just push him in or have him try and jump over the pile or something. I'm not doing anything fancy like, a naked boot or anything like that, but I'm just going for the money right up the middle.
There's just here's the thing is, even with that, you would still had to go to overtime to win. Hell, you might not even went to overtime because the Giants did nothing when they got the ball back. And maybe the Bears with that 50 seconds left and all their timeouts left end up scoring anyways.
I mean, again, that's a little bit like if Jameis Winston goes in, we win the game. Their offense, their play calling is going to be completely different, knowing they must score a touchdown to tie the game versus, we just need some chunk plays, and then you get chunk plays plus broken tackles, and now all of a sudden you're in touchdown position. It is called a little differently, but I hear what you're saying.
I agree. It is soft, right? It is I'm not sitting here I like to be aggressive on 4th down, right? I lean aggressive on it. But it is, you could say it is soft coaching. It 100% is soft coaching. I don't blame them. I just don't blame them with the way the run game had looked when they got under center and needed to get some ugly yards. They didn't win up front at all. You just 2 plays before that, they tried to give it to Singletary, and they weren't able to get any yards. I don't trust Russ in any type of passing situation, any type of passing situation. I've seen them try and get those yards, and they just haven't been able to do that this year. It's why Jaxson Dart's running ability has been so huge in the red zone, is because that's where they've gotten the rushing touchdowns is off Jaxson Dart. Cam Scat, Tracy and Singletary have 0, or actually Tracy has the 1 long touchdown. They have 1 combined touchdown on the year. So it's soft, but when I have no faith in my offense to do anything on the next drives, I'm taking the 2-score lead and hoping my defense can hold that type of lead. Now, granted, this defense has been terrible at holding these leads and collapsing, but that's also soft too. If you can't trust your defense with 10 minutes left to keep a 2-score lead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I don't know if it's lack of trust in the defense or just knowing how bad the defense was playing. You know, I think also like you're getting a lot of pressure with the defense. I don't know if we can use this to pivot to the defensive side of the ball, but like you're getting a lot of pressure with the defense, but you can't seem to wrap up Caleb Williams. You put him into like, you know, snapping the ball at the half-yard line. He doesn't have all of this room in the back of the end zone to scramble around and extend plays. So now you're sort of limiting what Caleb Williams is able to do to avoid sacks. Like that's an actual chance for a safety. And, you know, again, now we're talking about 2 points instead of 3 points, but I'm fully aware. I just, you know, I don't know. I have this opinion, right, where I'm going for it from the half-yard line. I'm also not sitting here talking to you guys and saying like, this is the reason the Giants lost the game. That's just a decision I would have made. And it's just another bullet in my gun for, that's an awful metaphor. It's just another argument that I have for Brian Daboll making questionable head coaching decisions in games. You know, so I'm not sitting here saying they win the game if they score the touchdown there.
With hindsight, I agree with you. Just in the moment, I'm not changing my mind 10 times out of 10. So let's pivot to the defense. We got to watch the film, bro, a little bit. Shane Bowen, I think, is in a tough place when he's facing this Chicago Bears offense specifically because they're the number 2 rushing offense in the NFL, right? The number 2 rushing offense in the NFL. They run their play action out of under center so well, and Caleb Williams was breaking every sack. You know what I mean? So, like, here's the issue is they ran the ball so well, and the Giants' run defenders suck. That is obviously Shane Bowen influence as well. But, like, they just – and Ben Johnson, credit to him in the fourth quarter, stayed committed to running the ball and using play action, right? That's what I was hoping was get them out of running situations because when they just do straight drop back, they're bad. And you could look at the numbers. Caleb play action, 8 for 11, 116 yards. Caleb straight drop back, 12 for 25, 106 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then do I have the sacks on that? He didn't have any sacks because he broke them all. So, but like, you know, and the scrambles out of that too. So like they couldn't sack Caleb Williams when they had a chance to. They can't go into split safety or else the Bears are just going to run all over them, which they did still. But when you're playing that under center heavy formations and they do play action, you're kind of leaving your outside corners a little bit on an island because your linebackers are flowing so heavy downhill. And these corners stink outside of Cordell Flott. And that's what they did. They attacked Deonte Banks penalties. Whenever Corey Black was in the game, they attacked Corey Black. Drew Phillips got some penalties, got saved. And the Bears also had some, you know, a bunch of drops and a couple of missed throws too, where they could have had, you know, 500 yards passing in this game instead of 126 or 122. So it's just hard to defend this Bears defense with the personnel the Giants have, where they're bad in the secondary, they're bad in run defense, their linebackers are not playing well, they're not, you know, being able to get back and cut off windows in coverage, and you just can't stop the run. Like this is where preseason worries, right? Training camp worries. Grandpa was like, this pass rush is fun. And I thought the pass rush sucked today. And not just because they missed sacks. I just didn't think they were getting pressure very often or winning. And that happened with all of them. But if a team could just run the ball on you, it just puts you in bad situations consistently.
I thought that Shane Bowen called a pretty good defense. I think that the team is just not very good in the back end. Like you said, where there is an area to exploit, it was exploited. So Deonte Banks isn't very good. Bad penalties, repeated penalties in bad situations. You know, Cordell Flott is, you know, not bad, but he's still like a cornerback too. He got beat for a penalty in this game as well. But he played fine. But, you know, Drew Phillips had 1 penalty as well. But overall, I think in coverage, I don't know if he gave up anything.
So he gave up he gave up 2 catches for 21 yards. I will say the film, bro, a lot worse. There was a third down where I cannot believe they didn't call pass interference on him. They did call pass interference on another play, and then that play where Odunze smoked him, and Caleb just missed him. So,
well, that's the other thing too. I mean, so the players played badly and they were exploited, but this game, I hate to be like this, but like this, the Bears should not have been losing this game. Like they were dropping passes. Caleb Williams is overthrowing people. In when you look at Jaxson Dart versus Caleb Williams in terms of how they fared in the wind, I don't know if Caleb Williams is usually overthrowing guys like this, but Jaxson Dart looked money throwing the ball. Caleb Williams looked a little shoddy. Stuff just past outstretched arms. He was also, receivers weren't doing him any favors, dropping stuff left and right. I think Shane Bowen did the best he could. The players didn't do that well, right? Like the pass rush was getting there. They weren't able to get him down. The pass rush is getting there, with some creative blitzes, where we're adding the fifth guy, the linebacker coming in. Yeah. But when they were rushing 4, they were getting pressure too. They just weren't getting sacks. And the pass rush wasn't doing well. Like you said, the pass rush stunk. But it's not as if, we were calling an unaggressive defense or anything. The players just didn't play well. I thought that the defense.
I thought the pass rush wasn't very good when they were rushing 4. Like Kayvon had some wins, but then he missed the sacks. I thought Burns didn't do much of it. Burns actually did good when he had the pass breakup on the screen and then he had a tackle for a loss on the screen. But just rushing the passer, I was surprised. Like, man, you guys should be beating whatever their left tackle's name is. I can't forget, or Darnell Wright. Abdul Carter. The last 2 games, I've been singing the praise of Abdul Carter all year. The last 2 games, he just hasn't been winning the way
Darius
he was.
Alexander got a pressure going right up the middle, looked pretty good.
Yeah, so like Kayvon had 3 times where Caleb was in his arms, didn't get it. Brian Burns had one. Darius Alexander had one. And then we had an Abdul Carter and a Dexter Lawrence sack taken off the board due to penalties by Deonte Banks and Drew Phillips.
Yeah, and I think the Drew Phillips one was kind of whack, personally. But, I don't have any qualms with the referees in this game. It was fine. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying that the pass rush played well, but when they were rushing a few, it was pretty clear also that, when pressure was getting there and they weren't getting sacks, whatever, Caleb Williams was throwing the ball worse. That's, that's where you started seeing, the overthrows and stuff like that, where you had open receivers and you just can't make anything out of it.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, I know he's winning and stuff right now, and he's making good plays. I'd be so frustrated with him if I was his coach, because I was like, man, they're blitzing and you're just not prepared. You mentioned, Shane Bowen did blitz a good amount of times. In fact, maybe I have the actual numbers of how often he blitzed. This is not perfect. 32%, which is 10% higher than the Giants season average. But he just didn't see stuff, right? Where I'm like, oh, quick, easy throw right there. And Caleb's just not throwing it. And then what he does well is he breaks the tackles on those where they're not turned into sacks. Right. And that's something we talked about on the preview pod, where it's like, they have only been sacked 14 times in 8 games, but Caleb still holds on to the ball needlessly at times when there's stuff there to be taken. Now, what Caleb did do well is run their play action, hit the in breakers down the field, and break tackles, and then get rushing yards, because he had how many rushing yards did he have in this game?
He had 63.
63, yeah. 63, including that touchdown at the end, where that's where you saw his speed, where he just beat Roy Robertson-Harris to the corner, and then everyone else was blocked up. So, yeah, it's just you got to convert. When you have hands on him, you have to finish those plays, and we're maybe talking about a win on this instead of another collapse. But I still think it all stems from the run defense. They had 171 rushing yards, and that's that. They had 171 rushing yards. The Giants did do some good things to stop it earlier, right? Where they were trying to run some plays like the Broncos ran successfully, and Brian Burns busted up. And I even think the defensive tackles outside of Dex were getting wins and getting some stops at the line of scrimmage. It was just anytime there's something outside the tackles, you have the DBs not fitting it well. Demetrius Flanagan fouls, despite a couple of nice plays, just mostly terrible for the most part. Okereke wasn't much to be found anywhere. And then, there's just guys in the wrong gaps and stuff. And that's what leads to just terrible run defense over and over again. But credit to Ben
Williams
Johnson.
Have a design run?
Say it again?
Did Caleb Williams have a single design run?
Yeah, but I know there's one. I actually wrote a note on it where they ran that. Remember the sweep touchdown that Bo Nix had against us? In fact, I think Sean Payton stole that from the 49ers in that crazy playoff game back in the day where Alex Smith had that touchdown at the end. And Brian Burns busted it up, right? So there was that designed run. I think outside of that, he only had what, 6 carries?
Yeah, I was going to say
8 carries. So maybe
I'm not going to
one
sit here and say
designed
that the run defense played well, because that would be lying. The run defense was bad, but out of 171 rush yards, 63 of those are pretty much Caleb Williams scrambles, which is not really run defense. To hold the Bears to 108 rushing yards, again, I'm not going to sit here and say that.
That's over 5 yards. You're grading it on the Giants' defensive curve, and you have to think the play action was so successful off of it too.
Oh, they were bad, but it was also just not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I don't know about you, but like they were not ripping off like consistent 12-yard runs, which is I really thought that was going to be like that from start to finish. So in terms of how the players played was not good, whatever, but. I don't know. And they didn't need to sell out against the run to do it. I didn't think.
Well, and you have to. Can we get some hydrated special teams?
Yeah.
Why aren't our special teams performing, Grump?
Our special teams stink because our punter is not hydrated, having to do kickoff duties as well, and it's because he didn't get his required body armor. And this recap episode is brought to you by Body Armor Sports Drink. Rewrite your routine and choose better with Body Armor. Bobby's drinking Body Armor water right there on the screen. Body Armor is real hydration with electrolytes, coconut water, and no artificial dyes, flavors, or sweeteners, with great tasting flavors like strawberry banana and orange mango. Body Armor will level up your hydration game. Grab Body Armor Sports Drink today at your local grocery store. Body Armor, choose better. You'll be glad you did.
You will be glad you did, because you need to be freaking hydrated. I tried to stay hydrated in the game, but I was taking so many notes I didn't hydrate the way I usually. Or usually I overhydrate in the game, if that makes any sense.
Peeing the whole time we're doing.
Yeah, I have to keep on running back and forth between TV timeouts. In this game, I wasn't as, so I got to get freaking more hydrated. The special teams, though, I can't believe we didn't talk about that. It was just kick out of bounds to start, and a landing zone penalty by Jamie Gillen. Then Gillen got benched for Younghoe Koo as the kickoff duties. And then with 3 minutes left, punting the ball, we have a 26-yard punt. And it's like, oh, of course. Of course that's what happens. Of course we'd have a disastrous special teams performance game, Grump, and we would never talk about Younghoe Koo in a negative light in that. Of course that's how the Giants show up for this one.
So it's pretty weird because, I don't think that Jamie Gillen actually had a bad day. I think that this fun thing that they're doing to kind of hit the new kickoff rules of using Jamie Gillen's like directional kicking is a good idea. It's just a bad idea in a game like today where it's super windy. Like this is just not a game where I'd fuck around with something like that. And I would rather just have my kicker kick it deep and just, get touchbacks or just, maybe have him catch it around the 1 yard into the end zone, and maybe you can get him on a short run back. But like this cutesy idea of like playing the directional kicking game, I'm just not doing it in a game where you're not really, if you're going for it on 4th down consistently because you don't trust your kickers to make field goals, then don't do anything cute on your kickoffs. So like, I don't really blame Jamie Gillen for not doing a specialized kickoff well in a windy day. However, the bad punt at the worst time is very uncharacteristic of him. And it sucks because, yeah,
I mean, he
didn't really have to punt that much in this game. So like, there's just not much good to talk about. Like he's not a bad punter. He had the worst possible. I mean, I guess other than not catching the snap, the worst thing you could do is shank a kick.
Yeah. And he did shank the kick. So bad day.
Bad day, yeah, but I mean, I don't even view it as benching him as the kickoff guy because they should have never been doing that in this game, in my opinion.
No, now maybe if Younghoe Koo can do that thing better, then you do it. But yeah, they've had way too many penalties doing that. But he shaked the punt as a punter, so I hate that. I hate that a lot.
And Younghoe Koo can kick. How do you figure?
Yeah, what was his longest kick in this one?
I mean, I don't think it was much. I think it was possibly 35, 33 maybe.
Kicking. His longest was a 32. But he made everything, and that's what freaking counts. So
except in warm-ups. He did miss 2 in warm-ups.
But they were long, and it was windy. It was windy.
We're counting them now, though.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what Young Wei Koo should say. Like, they come to talk to him after the game. Like, what do you think of your game? He's like, yeah, I went 4 for 4 in the game, but I went, 4-9 in warm-ups. Like, I suck. I should be fired for Graham Gano. Graham Gano doesn't miss any warm-ups. So some other notes that we want to clean up on. Slayton and Theo Johnson, right? Like, they combined for 160 yards in this game.
This is what I thought they would
the
look
most
like
difficult catches possible. It's like, you got to be freaking kidding me. Like, these two are just making the most tough catches in the world. Theo Johnson, while getting hit, contorting his body between two guys. And then
Slayton had like an all-hands catch, like away from his body too.
Yeah, like the one-hander by Slayton up the sideline. And it's like just when Slayton even lost me as like a supporter, right? I was like, I'm just done. Like, you keep doing this in games in a row, and then just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back. I got to make that as a drop for the show because we use it. I use it too often. But I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He just makes these tough catches. Dude, that deep catch was pretty good play design by the Giants where they run that deep post and then the underneath crosser. They run it all the time. They fake the post, hit the corner, and then he gets wide ass open. Dart hits him. Had that dig on third down, like a third down catch. Like, and then, he dealt with a hamstring injury, came back in. I don't know if he was fully healthy because they were still rotating him in, but at least he wasn't so injured that he couldn't come back in the game. So hopefully he's ready to go for next week.
I thought Wandale had a pretty good game too, just an untimely drop. But again, it's like that was on third down. His route had him like 4 yards short of the sticks anyway. He had to dive for it. So even if he catches it, like,
I don't think it makes much of a difference, but
no,
still
I thought he had a good game.
But yeah, Theo. And then the Bellinger. So Bellinger has the penalty, which makes it a fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
Which, penalties happen. I'm not going to kill him on that. But Greg Olsen actually made a great point, which is talks about attention to detail with this team, where they run that play action 4th and 1. You've got to pin down the person who's going to be chasing Dart. Go back to the Panthers game. If you guys want, if you so dare, watch the Giants-Panthers film review again, where Daniel Jones has a rushing touchdown in that game after a 1-yarder, where Chris Manhertz pins down the defensive end and Jones is able to run to the corner. They run the same play with Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson doesn't pin that player down, and now that person is chasing Jones. Jones tries to throw it over him. He tips it up to himself and catches an interception. Like, little details like that matter. So this one, Dart doesn't have like an ability to run or make the a wide open throw to Bellinger. So now he's double covered because of that. Not double covered, but like Dart doesn't have that ability to take the easy scramble to turn into a first down, and then just doesn't hold on to the ball. I know there's some like argument of like that could have been a catch still because he did, but anytime you're going to the ground and the ball pops out, I'm not going to be mad oh, that technically should be a catch. And I don't think they should have reviewed it either because I just don't see them overturning a play where the ball popped out basically as he was going to, hitting the ground.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that one sucks. And it's another one too where I'm not really calling that like a drop either. Like, yeah, it was a perfectly placed ball, but you got an arm in there kind of prying it as you're landing. Like, you could just it barely squeaked out. We're sitting here saying that there's possibly an argument that it was a catch. I'm not gonna blow my lid over him not catching that one.
Yeah.
Sucks.
But let's kind of recap overall, like our thoughts on this game as we wind down here, Grump. There's just no excuses for this team. Like, that's that. I don't want to hear excuses. Like, I know we're still a ways away from the bye week presser because of how late the bye week is. But I just don't want to hear like, oh man, if we finish 3 of those 3 games, we're 5 and whatever. You say they win one of these next games, we're 6 and 7 or whatever. I didn't do that on purpose. I swear. I promise. We're 6 and 8 or whatever, and a little tougher schedule. I just don't want to hear that. Right? It's just there's no excuses. Russell Wilson going in the game. You chose him to be your backup quarterback. You chose him to be your starting quarterback. Right? That was the plan. Was to have Jaxson Dart as your starting quarterback. Or Russell Wilson is your starting quarterback. Him playing 1 fourth quarter should not ruin a game. And if it is, then Jameis should have been the backup quarterback. If that's your excuse, then Jameis Winston should be your backup quarterback. I think it's ridiculous the way they handle this wide receiver position of not putting guys on the roster that they value over other guys who give you. Jalen Hyatt gives you no special teams value, none, and you have a player on your practice squad that you value more, and you're not putting him on the roster. Why? Oh, well, Paulson Adebo is injured. That Deonte Banks is a third-year first-round pick. That's not an excuse. So I just don't buy any excuses for this team to be 2-8. There's no excuse for them to be 2-8. They within the building thought that they were going to be way better. When I hear stuff like that, I'm like shocked. It's like I'm shocked that they're shocked at this being the outcome. It's like they just view things with, like an optimistic fan. Which if you're an optimistic fan, be an optimistic fan. You shouldn't be running the team though, and that's the way they run this damn thing. I want to end with this, Grump. Any chance do you think we're doing a Brian Daboll Fired episode?
At all or tomorrow?
This week.
Yeah, I think there's a chance.
What would you put your percentage? Which I hate that game. I hate when shows do that. I hate when I was on shows and they would ask me to do that. What's your percentage of we are doing a Giants Fire Brian Daboll episode tomorrow?
15%. I think it's low. But yeah, I don't know. I think they don't want to do it before the bye week. But with the headlines being like for a whole group of people that are very concerned with headlines and optics, the headlines are going to be that they dropped another lead. And Jaxson Dart got concussed and left the game. So even though like there are nuances to that we just went over in this, like that are defendable, like, whatever, it's not Brian Daboll's fault that he got concussed or whatever. It's just another thing that was like a lead up conversation. So, it's hard to escape the negative press that's going to come, and they seem to care about that. So I do think that there's a non-zero chance. I guess 15%.
I'm going to say 16% because if we do the episode, I can say I told you, Jump. You didn't put any. I actually think less.
That's such bullshit because you asked me first. You put me in a position where you could do that.
This is my show. I get to make the rules. I'm playing both sides, so I always end up on top. I don't think there's. I just don't. I think there's a lot of games left. Here's one thing: if they do, I don't want to hear let's see what we have in Mike Kafka. No, this is just an event. This is just getting to the end, okay? We're not looking to see what we have with anybody on this coaching staff outside of Carr and Brasillo. We're not doing that. We are not keeping Mike Kafka as the head coach, even though that may not be the most – even though that may have, been floated as like a way to get through whatever. So, yeah. So, franchise record for consecutive road losses with 11 in a row. Fourth quarter collapse. And just one last big picture. I said at the top, both the GMs hired at the same time. I don't think Ryan Poles has even done a very good job. But his team is 6-3. Their second head coach. They fired one after year 3. The only remaining players from the last regime are Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson is injured. Cole Kmet is their backup. And for the Giants, they're 2-8, and their two best players on the team are from the last regime. So. All right, so we're going to end it there. Appreciate you guys all for listening. We will be back. Well, episode-wise, we're planning to be back Wednesday. But if Brian Daboll gets fired,
who knows? Then
we'll be back sooner than then. So, yeah, dude. So this is our first episode. Let's actually grade ourselves. I actually think we did a pretty damn good job going live this quickly after the game. Because I took great notes in the game. Let's grade ourselves because we grade the Giants. And I don't open the chat during the live recordings of the podcast. I'm going to open it right now. I want to hear your guys' grades.
Yeah, let's get grades. How was our?
I thought it actually made me be more plugged in. And like when they're 2-7, 2-8, and you're not as like living and dying with each play. I think I might even raise our grade, right? I think we're a couple of guys who, when the pressure's, coming down the hardest, that's where we play our best football. I think
that the takes are a little different, right? Because it's very much like I have to rewatch, but like I have incredible notes from the game. It keeps me dialed in. I I thought we did good. I think I didn't do any worse than I normally do.
Yeah, I think I upped my game compared to the last couple of weeks, where I take my majority of my notes after game. I was taking most in game, maybe locking in, taking notes on like every other play essentially, and then updating them quarter by quarter. I even had some pre-game notes, right? Like here's like a little look behind the thing. I had the Giants franchise record. I had that and stuff ready to go if they lost. And I'm like, hell yeah, I get to delete these notes. Didn't get to delete these notes. So hopefully, make sure to comment your grade for us. Just want to thank the sponsors, Body Armor and Candlewyck Diner. We couldn't do it without them and you, the people, especially on patreon.com/Giants Nation. So we see you when we see you. Until then, let's go Big Blue.